Okay. All right, so here we are. It's January 22nd, 2019. Quarter-minute magnums, and what we're going to be talking about today is triggers, which is actually quite a lot to talk about. So we have a customer here right now. He's actually been here for the last couple hours, and he's a local guy. And he's building his first custom rifle. And so we were picking out components, barrels, stocks, receivers, bottom metal, all the stuff that goes into building a gun. And we were nearly finished, and it occurred to us that, you know, we have to pick a trigger also. And we've been thinking about making a trigger video anyways, because I get a lot of questions about triggers. So what we have here right here is we actually have 7 triggers laying here. And hopefully the camera will come in and look at them. We have 2 Joules, we have 2 trigger techs, and we have 2 Hubers, and this is just an extra trigger tech that's already out of the package. So I'm going to use that to show people. Now, here's the thing. Over the course of the last decade, we've used a lot of different kinds of triggers. We have not used them all, so I can't comment on every different trigger that's out there because there's quite a few. But, like a lot of things, the more that you use certain products, the more that you end up just using those products. In other words, these 3 triggers, these 3 brands of triggers that you see here, the Joules, the Trigger Techs, and the Hubers are what we're using now, and pretty much that's what we're using exclusively. And I like all 3 of them, but for different applications. And again, we can't cover everything into triggers. We're not going to take these triggers apart. We're not going to take the side plates off. We're not going to show you how they actually work internally, because it's more than the scope of a 5 or 10 minute video. But what we are going to do is we're just going to cover some of the highlights. And Ron here, who's the man, one of these triggers is actually not one of these triggers, but one of these triggers, one of these type of triggers is going to go into his gun, and he's going to make that decision. So I'm going to start here with Joule. And we've been using Joule. I mean, I've had Joule triggers in guns long before I ever built guns, 30 years ago. So Joule is like the old standby. I mean, everybody on the earth who has a custom gun at one point or another had a Joule trigger in it. And I actually want to show you some things about the Joule trigger. The one thing you will notice is that they're put together with screws. Okay, screws, pins, and clips, right? And the other thing about it is it's an open case design. In other words, you can see inside there. If I take a bright light and shine in there, you can actually see some of the internal mechanisms of how this trigger works. And again, I'm not going to go into how it works. I want you to look in there though, because this is important for our conversation. Okay, so it's an open case design. The issue with, and you might want to be looking at my face now, the issue with an open case design is stuff can get inside it. So it depends on how hard a duty, what type of duty you expect this trigger to be in. In other words, personally, say I'm going to build, well right now, the bench gun that I'm using as a bench rest gun has a 2-ounce Joule in it. And as that trigger in that gun, it's perfect. It's perfect application. I don't care if it's open or closed case design. I'm not dragging it through the woods. I'm not going through the brush. I mean, it works great. Now you got to realize we put a lot of these in hunting guns also. And 99% of the guys, 98% of the guys never have any trouble. You never hear from them. You know, they take a brand new gun, they're off years later, they have no trouble. But every now and then, I believe as we alluded to in another video, you'll get a guy that the trigger doesn't want to cock. That is, when he closes the bolt, the firing pin will move forward. And the reason, 99% of the time, is because it gets dirt inside it. It gets dirt internally in it, and then the sear, the part that comes back up to hold on to the cocking piece, does not want to actually catch on to it. In other words, you realize this is the part where it hooks. And so if you put it in the fire position, you put down pressure on that, and you pull the trigger, you notice that drop down, right? You can see it drop down. Well, what happens sometimes when they get dirt in them is they don't want to come the whole way back up. And because it doesn't want to come the whole way back up, as you go to cock the bolt, to load a cartridge and close the bolt, which it cocks on closing, then the firing pin just moves forward. In other words, basically the gun's out of operation. Now here's the thing that is a good part about this. It has screws. So you can take it apart if you know what you're doing, and you can clean it very easily. And a lot of times too, say you were in the field, in all likelihood, you're probably going to have to take the metalwork out of the stock. But if you had an air compressor, you could blow it out. If you blow it out, sometimes it starts working again right away. All right, the other thing you can do is you can hose it down with lighter fluid. Hose it down with lighter fluid, blow it out with an air compressor, and almost always it goes right back to working exactly the way it should. All right, these are good triggers. I like them. If I was going to battle in the desert, I don't think I'd want a Jewel. But on a bench rest gun, pretty much this is the standard. Okay, so that's Jewel. Oh, and by the way, something else too that I'm going to mention. We usually set these Jewels at 24, 26, or 28 ounces. So that's fairly light, even on a hunting gun. And what's interesting about these triggers is using the exact same trigger scale, trigger gauge, when they're all set at the exact same setting, say they're all set at 28 ounces, they all feel different. They all feel different. In other words, some of them feel heavier than what the scale says, and some of them feel lighter. So you kind of got to set it to the way you want it. There is one other thing that I kind of don't like. You adjust these with that set screw that's right in the trigger blade right there. I'm torn on it. Yes, it works. The thing is, we hunt on horses, four-wheelers. I mean, we do a lot of really hard-duty stuff. And sometimes that set screw right there bothers me. I've never lost one, but I have seen them almost fall out. And the reason probably that I never lost it is because I'm aware of it and I pay attention. So I suppose you could Loctite it in there, but I never do. But again, pretty much Jewel's the standard. Okay, so there's two Jewels right there. By the way, if you have any questions, just fire away. Okay, so these are Trigger Tech. And I just so happen that I have two here, but I have one. You might want to see these. I have one that's already out. It was actually in the gun that I hunted with this year. And so I have it out, and so I'm going to show it to you. If she can zoom in and see that. You actually have a lot of choices in this. And that's just, all I'm showing you is what we use. I'm not going to go into all that. But you can get different blade designs. You can on the Jewel also. You do realize on all these also, I mean, you can get top safety, bottom safety, right hand safety, left hand safety, no safety. Usually in bench rest guns, we have no safety. There is no safety, it's just the trigger. But what I want to show you on this one is, this also has screws holding it together, but it's a closed case design. All right? You see that pretty much it's sealed up the whole way around, right? And even the way that the safety lever is put on and stuff, it's pretty secure. I mean, it's a pretty good design. There's no doubt about it. I've used these now for like maybe, I don't know, the last couple years. And like I said, I hunted with this exact trigger this year. We like these. This is a nice trigger. They seem to be very well made. They're very uniform, and they work really nice. And I'll tell you something about this is, when I first started using these, they break so cleanly that I did what I always do. I set it up at 28 ounces with the exact same gauge that I always use and same scale, and I put it in a gun, and I'm like, holy cow! I thought it was like 14 ounces. It breaks so cleanly that I actually had to get the scale back out and recheck it. And I actually ended up, I set these heavier. These are usually up at about 32 ounces because they break so cleanly. They feel, and I realize this is hard to explain, but they feel different than a Jewel. So when you've got down, when it's cocked and you have your finger on the trigger, I mean, it just breaks. And again, I've seen the internal design of this. It's completely different than a Jewel. Whether it's better or whether it's worse, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they feel different. It's a well-made trigger. And this is secondhand information. Okay? I get to talk to an awful lot of people that have been using an awful lot of these triggers. Supposedly, even if these get really covered with dirt, if they get grit, sand, everything in them, I've heard that they keep working. They keep working, and it's just like they advertise. They just keep working the way they're intended to work, even if you don't take good care of them. Which, when I go back to the Jewel, what I'm trying to say with the Jewel is, this you have to take care of. You have to treat this with respect. This, I've heard of guys abusing the living crap out of them, and they keep on working. So, can you see that? Did you actually get a good view of it? Go ahead.
So, at 28 ounces.
At 28 ounces, it felt like 14.
And then you moved it to 32.
Yeah.
And it still didn't feel like you were going to pull
No,
it off target.
Not at all. It break here. Go ahead and do it. You can, you can do this. It's really simple to do this. Just put down pressure on it, like the gun was cocked, and then put your finger on the trigger, and then pull the trigger, and you'll feel it snapped in. I mean, it's really easy to do.
So what is that set at, do you know?
32 ounces.
Yeah, that is really light.
Yeah, and it feels like nothing.
Wow.
So the thing with these, this is something too that we're going to get into when we get to this next set of triggers. Triggers are weird because you realize there's a lot of mental stuff going on as you get ready to fire a gun. And some people like to feel it creep just a little bit and then break. Like this, you do not feel that. When you decide to shoot this, you put your finger on it. The moment your brain says apply pressure, the gun goes off. Now, I don't know. If I set it up higher yet, maybe not. But at 32 ounces, the gun just goes off. I mean, it's like, wow, it just went off. Okay. All right, so we got the jewels. We got the trigger text. And oh, and I wanted to mention about the different blades. This is the one we like best. Again, I don't know what they call this. It was on the end of that box. Here, she can look again. I don't know whether you can see it. What's that called?
Pro curved.
Pro curve. Okay, so that's called the Pro Curve. We've tried 2 or 3 of the other type. It's just, that's the one I like the best. All right, so now, that being said, now we come to a unique kind of trigger. These are Hubers, H-U-B-E-R. And in fact, I guess I'm going to advertise just a little bit for John Huber. This is him, Huber Concepts. Now, these are a different kind of trigger. First of all, I want you to look at it and look how it's made. All right, this trigger has no screws in it. It is riveted together. So the upside of that is it's never coming apart. The downside is it's never coming apart. So if you have to work on it, you're not going to. Okay, but this is steel. This is actually melanited steel. Everything about this trigger is super heavy duty. And this is the coolest thing about it. This is a 2-stage trigger. So you pull 1 pound back on spring pressure. There's actually 1 pound of spring there. And once you get that 1 pound on there, you come back to a solid wall. And you're up against that wall, and then you apply exactly 16 ounces more, and the gun goes off. Now, here's the thing about a 2-stage trigger. Some guys hate them, and some guys love them. I love it. One of my friends that's here in town that has a bunch of my guns, his name's Kelly, he hates it. He loves jewels. So the only reason I'm bothering to say that is you don't know till you shoot them. Okay, I love these 2-stage triggers. I really, really, really like this trigger. It is a very, in my opinion, maybe even one of the best triggers. That whole spring pressure deal, for my mind, the way I shoot is excellent because say I'm getting ready to shoot an elk and he's out there at 800 yards. I'll get all lined up on him. I will take up that first 1 pound and I'll literally be laying there watching him through the scope until he stands exactly the way I want him to stand. And then you apply that next 16 ounces and the gun just goes off. Here, you might want to feel that. Those are really cool triggers. Now, of course, with everything, and you might want to be looking here for a second when I tell you this, there's always a catch to everything, right? So, these jewel triggers, and I'm just saying approximately, these jewel triggers are in the $200 range, okay? These Trigger Tech triggers are in the $250 range, approximately. And when you get to these Huber triggers, they're in the $300 range. So, as you progress up here, you also are progressing in cost. And to some guys, that $100, $150, it makes a difference. To some guys, it doesn't. It depends on what you want. So now, you're going to be putting a trigger in this gun. He's building a bat receiver gun, by the way. It's going to be a 30 nozzler with a Krieger barrel. It's going to be a bat HR repeater on a Macmillan A3. So what trigger, just on this information, what trigger, which way do you think you would go?
It's definitely one of these two.
One of these two. And the reason is?
Just the feel of it.
Just the feel of it.
I'm wondering if I could get used to that.
The two-stage?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice when it gets there.
Oh, yeah. And I will say something else, again, and without getting too technical, you know, you use a trigger scale and you cock it, you shoot it, you cock it, you shoot it, you cock it, you shoot it, and you see how uniform these triggers are. And I must tell you, both of these, and don't get me wrong, like I said, the Jewel is the old-time standard. It's a good trigger. But like that Huber will break consistently beyond what my scale can measure. In other words, basically, for my crappy old scale, the same every single time. No variance, like zero variance. So 32 ounces, 32, which actually in that, it's 16 and 16. So 32, 32 every single time. Exactly the same. And I personally, because, you know, we use things hard duty. Oh, one other thing about this, there's something else it's pretty important to mention is, obviously, the Jewel, you can adjust yourself. You can adjust it up or down within a range. And I don't really want to say a range, because there's different springs and things you can put in them, but within a range. These trigger techs, these are adjustable. You might want to come in here and look. Externally adjustable from 4 ounces to 32 ounces. And that's this model. They make other models also, but these are the ones we use. So you can externally adjust it, and I want to show you something. That's that screw right there. And one kind of thing that's kind of interesting about that screw is it has like little denty ball on it. So that like it turns in like quarter turns, like turn, drop in, turn, drop in. Where on the Jewel, it's just friction. It just goes wherever it is. You know what I mean? You can stop anywhere. This, you turn it, drop it in, drop it in, drop it in. And it's nice. Okay, but 4 to 32 ounces. These, you tell Mr. Huber what you want when you order it. This is not adjustable. And I should say, yeah, it is, but you're not supposed to mess with it. In other words, when you order this trigger, you know, I tell him, I want 1 pound on that first stage, I want 1 pound till it breaks. And that's the way they come. And basically, you're just supposed to install it and not mess with it. So I like all of these. Like I said, I've probably used 200 of these Jewels. I probably only used maybe not even a dozen of these, and maybe a dozen of these, I'm not sure. But I like them all. Like I said, if it's a bench rest gun, I'm probably going to be using the Jewel. If it's a medium range hunting gun, I'm probably going to be using this, in what we call our middle gun. If it's going to be top of the line, every single thing, and money is no object, I'm probably going to be using that Huber. So, you got any questions?
This is local, or
Is it what?
where's he at?
Oh no, he's in, I think, Wisconsin. I'm not sure.
So you call up and you order your trigger, and then
Yes, he is in Wisconsin. I was right. Yes.
you tell him what you want.
Right.
1 pound and then 2 pound. That's what
Within a range. And again, he sends a lot. I mean, I got to tell you now, I'm pretty fanatical about things, and guys actually get on me for being too anal retentive and stuff. But this guy puts me to shame. Okay? This is what comes with one of these triggers. First of all, you can't even get in it. Second of all, this is what comes with one of those triggers. I mean, by the time you get it, he has tested that thing every which way from Sunday. He actually has, there's your exact trigger. I mean, you talk about being fanatical about stuff. I mean, holy cow. I mean, and you realize each trigger, too, has a serial number on it. So, I mean, he's pretty serious about his triggers, let's just put it that way. But again, they cost, you know, 300, actually, even maybe more. Again, I don't do this, my wife does the numbers. So if I quoted prices and I'm not right, it's because I'm not the one who actually buys them. She knows. But again, there's approximately, like I said, approximately 200, 250, 3 and up. I think even almost up to $400. So, you know, a lot of guys, I mean, you can buy guns nowadays for $400 with a scope on it. And some of them even actually shoot a little bit. But I mean, these triggers are, it's really something. And by the way, he's showing you here too, you might want to come in here, all the different options and stuff that you can get with it. I mean, they're pretty serious triggers. And you notice the serial number for that individual trigger is right there. And he tells you all the stuff about it. And you see, he doesn't just say two, I mean, he takes everything out to like the 4th decimal point. So they're pretty serious triggers. Anyways, you know, again, we're not making a judgment on them. We're just showing you what we use now. I mean, and I actually think for the rest of our career until I get so old and I croak, unless these guys aren't in business, these are probably the triggers that we're going to be using. So we just thought we would tell you. Is that it? Okay, thanks a lot. See you later.